Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I have another Extreme Ultimate Decades recap for you. The years we're going to be covering are 1311 through 1320. The reason this one is not being done before the most recent decade was because this is the one I put off and kind of did like a weird summary before I started 1321. Where I kind of loosely talked about where the characters were and the plot because I wanted to change the format on how I do recaps. And I'm still working on that, and I'm just going to do my best storytelling wise. But I did want to get this one filmed. So if anyone does want to watch it because they didn't want to go back and watch all the episodes, I totally wanted to get one out for you guys. I will start off by saying that this is where the story really got big for us and our world expanded. So I had so many moving pieces from the years 1311 to 1320 that at times I even was getting confused. So in the third decade, I always say when I'm talking to my husband about this, I'm like, oh, and the third season is how I see every 10 years as a season. So we did season 1, obviously, and then I just finished season 3 and posted that recap video. So this would be season 2. In the third season, I felt like I got to rein it in a bit and focus. Even though I'm following multiple families, my story isn't as chaotic as it was. Mind you, second season was fun and I enjoyed it and I'm not mad about it, but it was very difficult storytelling wise. Usually when I'm playing and I'm doing all those crazy things, it's all in my head and I don't have to talk about it. And I found it very challenging to talk about. This is a recap video. You're not required to watch this if you've seen every episode. You won't be missing any information. But if you haven't seen episodes 1311, 1312, 1313, 1314, 1315, 1316, 1317, 1318, 1319, 1320, every episode that encompassed those years, this is kind of going to be a brief summary of what was going on in the Kingdom of Avalon and my sim world during those time periods. What I'm going to do is read from my notes and also annotate things that I remembered that happened. And then we're going to look at my screenshots while I talk. I do want to make a note that my next video will be the Alder family tree. And I do recommend that everyone watch that one just so you know who's alive and who all passed away and where all the moving pieces are. I highly recommend that. In the episode Back in the Medieval Times, and it ends up being a 4-part episodes, most of them being 20 minutes long. So we have Back in the Medieval Times, the Extreme Ultimate Decades, Catching Up with Jed, and A Quest for True Love, and the Spring Harvest. So those 4 episodes all encompass the year 1311. Highly recommend the year 1311. It was one of my favorites. Francis is dreaming of adventure, and Calvin talks to Euphema about their soulmate bond. Euphema is Calvin's wife, and we get a little bit of Euphema's background. She was in love with Calvin's brother before he passed away, and she was pregnant with his child. So Euphema was pregnant whenever Calvin's brother died. Calvin stepped up and married Euphema so her name wouldn't be ruined. Oldest child together is actually his nephew that he's adopted, but they do have, I believe, 2 children together. Euphema really believes in true love and soulmates. So Euphema agrees to have an amicable divorce with Calvin, separation, so he may follow his soulmate bond with Tamara. Tamara is still obviously married to Jedediah and has to get out of that whole kerfluffle. But with him having escaped after burning down their home, he isn't anywhere anyone can find. In our main Alder household, Jacob and Halia's son, Davos, passes away. Davos is the twin to Eddard. In the year 1311, we also catch up with Jedediah and see where he is. And he has met the Merriman family, which consists of John Merriman, Robin, and Eliza, I believe. I always forget her name. And remember, Jedediah took his children, Gemma, Lancelot, and Morgan. So here is Lancelot at his age up. Here's Gemma, loving adventure. John Merriman taught them how to shoot, and she was obsessed with it. It was really just adorable. Here's Halia on the farm. I think this was after Davos passed, so she was very sad. Here's where Alder Farm was in 1311. At the end of 1311, Calvin makes a deal with Duke Grant to help Tamara get out of her divorce and to hunt down Jedediah and the children. The Duke gives him a boat, but Calvin is the one who ultimately ends up going on this quest to find the children. And Tamara says, okay, I believe in true love and that's all fine, but I want my kids back. And I would love to have a true love, but at the end of the day, what's love? Love's not enough. She needed more, and she needed him to prove to her the depth of what that would mean. So he goes and tries to find the kids. Here's Halia with baby Caesar. Caesar was Francis's twin, and he is like Halia's #1 fan. He was always up his mom's skirts while she was cooking, and he was always, always, always around. So even in the afterlife, he came around visiting his mom. It was honestly a very emotional thing. as well as Francis. So here he is with Francis hugging his brother as he's like watching him grow up. It really made me emotional. It was very cute watching him play with his ghost brother. So there's them. So at the time we're looking at the family tree. This is Pascal. Pascal's no longer alive, but if you guys remember, Pascal is the brother to Julia and Tamara. Actually, I think that child in the photo was Edard. Unfortunately, Edard doesn't make it out of the decade, so that's why I technically didn't recognize him right away. Yeah. So this is Jacob with Edard, and here's the family tree. And here's just looking at the family tree from, this is our founding father. So this is Gen 1. This is where we started in the challenge, but I did have them have their dad because they were all teens. So I made him an elder, and eventually we did his death roll and he ended up dying in the year 1300. He didn't make it out. So this is where the sons went there. Connor was a triplet and he lost his brothers, one of them being named Frederick. The other one was a sister, but she's for some reason not on the family tree, as well as their mom isn't, which is interesting. But yeah, so that was a picture of Connor's line. Connor's children, Eric, Elijah, Christine, and Ashton. Jedediah's kids were Riker, Cadian, Nimue, Morgan, Lancelot, the child that they lost, and Michael and Gemma. And then Jacob and Julia had Frederick, Alice, Evelyn, Anthony, Christian, Caesar, Francis, Abraham, Gwendolyn, Arthur, Edard, Davos, and Alexander. So this is some of them, but not all of them are on the family tree. This is when I realized my family tree was already getting messed up in the game. Here, Julia is trying to teach Edard some baby stuff. And this is when she goes into labor with our Alexander, who we still have to this day. Alexander was born in the year 1312. So we're starting 1312 off with Alexander's birth. And Jacob helps Julia through that. She's always scared around pregnancy because she has lost tons of children. They were just really poor. So the likelihood of their children even surviving after birth was really low. They ended up losing half of their children. I want to say they got pregnant 13 times and have 6 living children. So Jacob is just alongside Julia, being the best, most supporting husband ever, and helps her with all the births, which is one of my most favorite things. So we're just kind of here for the birth of Alexander. And here Julia is again with all her kids, just still taking care of them while she is in labor. We have a son, Alexander. He's born, and the videos that encompass year 1312 are The Boy Who Lived, and this would be the cover photo of it. So that is when Alexander was born and survived, and I was very happy. So 1312 is 2 episodes, but which equal 22 minutes and 30 minutes long. So, oh, I love this photo. I really love the home birth mod. Edard does get to make it to a toddler. So this is Edard's birthday. In the second half of the year 1312, we have found out that the evil witch from the Dark Coven named Adriel is in an alliance with Prince, and he ends up sacrificing their daughter Honora, number 1, to save his son, John, because his son John is born with a defect, and the witch Adriel uses dark magic to transfers Princess Honora's life energy to John. And also the evil coven takes their daughter, Princess Honora, to be a vessel for the goddess of death. They want to bring Naru through, and they need someone technically of the Merlin bloodline, but they try to settle, they do try to settle for someone with the Lionheart bloodline since they are royalty. But so this is when that is occurring, and Princess Josephine is terrified because, you know, she has one dying son, and now she's finding out that her husband is in cahoots with this dark coven, trying to overthrow his father. But there's nothing she can do against the evil witch Adriel. So Adriel takes Princess Honora to their coven, and they do a ritual on her that makes her rapidly age. And they put the dark goddess into. So this is Adriel from the dark coven casting her spell. Here's Eleanor Gothic. We talk about Eleanor a lot in season 3, aka the playing in the 20s to 1330, because her children end up being key players in what we're about to approach as the 100-Year War. Princess Eleanor is the twin to Prince James, who currently through 1311 to 1320 is the heir to the throne. He's trying to overthrow his father to take over the kingdom, but his twin sister was married to Lord Roderick Gothic, who died in the early 1310s. Eleanor and Lord Roderick had several children together, one of those being Adelaide and Amor and Chadwick. So Eleanor takes her children and runs away to live with the Gothics because they have magic from the Merlin bloodline. And they are trying to protect her and their grandchildren. This is Tiara and her twin brother Laurent, and they are the younger siblings of Lord Roderick. So here's more of Eleanor in mourning. And Adelaide was cursed in the 1310s. If you guys have saw that recap, when she was a baby, she was cursed and she grew up with these white streaks because whenever Adriel, the Dark Witch, came to the kingdom, she originally wanted to make Adelaide the vessel for the dark goddess Naru to come through, because Adelaide is of the Merlin bloodline, because the Merlin bloodline is connected to the Gothic family. Unfortunately, Princess Eleanor was interrupting the spell and everything went awry, and then the witch battled Lord Roderick Gothic, and right now Adelaide is under the protection of the Gothic family, so they cannot get to her. But there is some lingering effects, and Adelaide ends up having really strong magic over life and death, because Merlin magic is life magic and the dark goddess is a goddess of death, so she does have this connection to death. And you can kind of see as she's lost pigment in her hair that she is affected by the curse. And Alexander survives his age up, so we have Alexander. His eyes are brown. Ugh. I have to make so many notes. So many people have green eyes in my screenshots originally, and now they all have brown eyes. So I'm going to have to go and change basically everyone's eyes to green. Talia is so happy Alexander survives his birth and he makes it to his first year. She's really happy about that. Out here, Francis is mourning his brother Caesar, like we saw many times before. He was really close with his brother. So not only dealing with that, he is haunted by his ghost brother. So Francis grows up to be very emotional because he feels like he lost like half of who he is. Talia is continuously making things for our family, and life is pretty good. They feel like they've had their last child, and they kind of decide, and this is where things are going to slow down for them a bit, and they're going to be focused on family. So she starts to teach some of her older children basic skills around the house, and they tell their children stories at night. Obviously, Talia and Jacob cannot read. I believe at this point, Jacob might have some rudimentary abilities to read certain things based on trade and family ledgers, but he is not as illiterate. He's not as literate as other people would be. So they just continue to be good parents and focus on their children. At the end of the year 1312, a plague comes via ship, and that plague is a vampiric plague. Nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows that it's vampires, but that's what it is. So they hear whispers about strange things happening to people at night, people getting sick for 3 days and then disappearing or dying, and everything is spooky. And as we enter the year 1313, everything just becomes really dark and spooky. So the king comes to his throne room one day in the year 1313 to find Vladimir sitting on his throne. Vladimir has lured his way into the castle, and he is here to help Prince James overthrow the king, but not for Prince James. He does it for himself. Vladimir is a cursed prince of the Merlin bloodline. He is the son of Merlin, and his sister Victoria and him have became vampires centuries ago, and they feel like the kingdom of Avalon has always been due to them, but their father Merlin did a spell to block out dark magic, and he made ties with the Gothic family line, ensuring that that dome of protection spell always stays active. But now that in the 1310s it was disturbed, in the early 1300s it was disturbed one day due to Prince and the Dark Witch Adelaide, now the vampires are allowed back into the kingdom of Avalon. During this time, they go around turning as many citizens as their power can allow into, and some of the citizens are strategically placed. They turn them into vampires to join their coven. Vladimir and Victoria were both promised something from the dark goddess if they help bring her through. So it has been their mission to bring her through. Now they feel all the pieces of their puzzle are coming together. So they are currently in control of the kingdom. So in the year 1313 and 1314, we decide that everyone needs to come to Alder Farm, and they build up little cabins and everyone stays closer together. So we have Tamara here because Amy ends up getting the plague, and at the time Tamara and Nimue are staying at Amy and Pascal's. Pascal stays with Amy, but Tamara takes their children and her daughter Nimue to Alder Village, and also Ashton and Christine, Eric and Elijah and their mom Ophelia also come to stay at Alder Village just to keep everyone close because they're not allowed to travel far distances. So this is nothing official from the kingdom saying not to travel, but like there's whispers like you shouldn't be doing this at night, you shouldn't go too far away from home because it's not safe in the kingdom. So they kind of rally together and build like a little tiny micro village where Jacob and Talia kind of lead the family. Here's Christine. She's really upset that she's no longer staying in the servant quarters of the castle, and her stepmom Ophelia uses her to take care of her little brother and sister. And she's just kind of sad because Christine has always kind of wanted more in life. So she doesn't like being used as a mother by her stepmother. and her and Ashton are still butting heads constantly. But I think at this point they're like sitting down to work together because they can see their stepmom Ophelia is so overwhelmed and they got to look out and have each other's back. So at this point they kind of make a truce. Here's Ophelia, you know, settling in. She's really upset that Connor ended up getting the plague as well. And, you know, her quality of life has went down because Connor became a master carpenter and he was doing well for them. They had a little inn inside of the town square and people would stay at their place and kind of respect them very well. So she feels like she's not meant for this like cabin life out in the woods. So she really struggles to acclimate. This is when Connor realizes it's not just a plague, but he is being transformed into a vampire. So that unfortunately happens. The vampire plague in year 1313 consists of 6 videos, each one about 20 minutes long. The episode names are Plague Vampiric, The Downfall of the Merlin Line, Mauled by a Bear, and Vampire Transformations Begin. The downfall of the Merlin line is when Vladimir takes his vengeance out on the Gothic family and he wipes the entire family away. He goes in one night with Victoria and a few of the dark witches from the coven, and they go and assassinate Lord Mortimer Gothic, his son Laurent. They attempt to end the life of Bella Gothic. Tiara does a very magical spell to bring her mom back from the brink of death, and Bella ends up wisping away her daughter Tiara and her 2 grandsons, Amor and Chadwick, and she goes straight to the magic realm using her Glimmerstone. The way I'm playing this is that Glimmerstones can only be used for emergencies and they have to be charged. So this was a very hard way to transport there, and it wasn't something that they could regularly do. But she was able to whisk them away while her son and her husband were unfortunately assassinated. They told Adelaide she would have to join their coven because she was marked at birth to be the vessel of the goddess Naru. And unfortunately, she can't be the goddess, but she is still marked by the magic, and they need a powerful witch like her to be in the coven. So they make a deal for her to go, and Adriel promises not to hurt her mother, who is Princess Eleanor. Vladimir also takes Princess Eleanor as his vampire thrall because he plans on using Eleanor as a host for the soul of his one true love, Evangeline. So during that time, the Gothic household is completely just destroyed, and all the good magic in the kingdom has been taken away, and vampires are currently running everything. So this is Connor's vampiric transformation, and this is the Dark Witch Adriel coming to collect him. In our household, our boys are growing up. This is Frederick and Francis, and they're just kind of talking about life on the farm and things that they enjoy. And Jacob is teaching Eddard things, how to walk, how to talk, and they end up getting goats on the farm. So even though the kingdom isn't doing great, you know, we're just kind of minding ourselves so we can survive. We end up realizing Victoria is the evil mastermind behind the overthrowing of the kingdom because she wishes to be queen. So she uses Prince James as her puppet. Frederick has a random age up when I go into game, and he ages up like a few years early. So we contribute that fact to Dark Magic of the Land, and I just kind of roll with it storytelling wise. So this is Frederick Alder, our first Gen 2 teenager. During the year 1313, during the end of the year 1313, Connor tells the family about dark magic and the vampire's plans once he finds out about it. And Amy ends up killing Pascal due to her being a power-hungry ripper vampire, and she can't control her bloodlust. So the family also loses their uncle during this time. So we spend a lot of time on the farm teaching Frederick how to farm, but he is really interested in smithing. So he goes around to ore deposits on the farm to collect stones, and Halia regularly is taking care of her children. Here she is with Alexander in the year 1314. Adelaide Gothic is sped up aging as well due to the curse of the coven. She technically wasn't supposed to already be a teen, but they enhanced her aging, part of her training, and they're trying to make her soul darken, but she has always remained good throughout everything they put her through. So we learn about how Victoria was Merlin's firstborn daughter, and she so desperately wanted to inherit the throne, and she was extremely power hungry. Merlin never prioritized one child over the other, nor birth order when it came to his heir. He chose whoever had a worthy heart to be his heir because he was the king of Avalon originally. He saw the darkness in Victoria because she would tamper around with dark magic and play around with death magic. So he chose not to name her heir and instead named his son Vladimir heir, and this upset Victoria. Victoria was also secretly pregnant, and she had planned to use her child as the original host for the dark goddess Naru, but Merlin stole her child away, and Victoria didn't know that happened. She thought that her child didn't survive birth, so she didn't know her father did that, but that is how the Merlin line technically continued. Merlin tried to lock away Victoria and strip her of her inheritance, but she made a deal with the dark goddess Naru, and the dark goddess Naru turned her into a vampire. So Victoria was the first vampire, and to get back at her father, she turned her brother Vladimir into a vampire and used her magic over him to make him believe that he was evil and that him and his father didn't see eye to eye. But at the time, Vladimir was married to Evangeline, and Evangeline was pregnant with their daughter Millicent. Whenever Merlin found out that his children were vampires, he did the spell to protect the kingdom of Avalon from dark magic and blocking them from the kingdom forever. And the whole time Evangeline was with Merlin, Victoria was trying to hunt her down to use Vladimir and Evangeline's child as the host for the dark goddess to protect them. So Merlin took Evangeline there and his granddaughter to the magic realm and protected them there, binding their life to Vladimir. So that way one day they could free Vladimir from the vampiric curse, but only when the timing was right. So Merlin, outcasts his children, and they don't end up becoming heirs to the throne. And eventually the Gothics become king and queen, and then the Lionhearts become king and queen. So here, Victoria is coming back for revenge against her father. This is Princess Honora. They use her for the vessel for the dark goddess Anaru. She wants to come through and decimate life and rule over everything. So we have the ceremony. They try to have a ceremony to bring her through, but unfortunately, things don't exactly work, and the dark goddess can't communicate properly, and everything's just like a little weird for them. The year 1314 is 2 episodes to take over a kingdom and one called Birthday Galore, trying to control Adelaide and vampire Connor, and basically telling them that they don't have a choice, that they have to go with the plans of Victoria and Vladimir because of the fact that they are going to be compelled to follow them. This is whenever Amy drains Pascal of his life because she is a Ripper vampire with an uncontrollable bloodlust. Here's Halia and Jacob on the farm, and they're just being cute as usual. And everything is kind of cozy, even though all the vampire stuff is going on. The farm is, doing all right. We're locking our doors at night. No one's really out here in the woods really focused on what's going on for us. So we're overall protected, and we have lots of birthdays going around. Nimue gets to age up into a child. This is Emmanuel Gilmore, son of Pascal and Amy. Here is Yvette Gilmore, daughter of Pascal and Amy. Halia and her sister Tamara, and Tamara and Riker's spirit. The family is really happy that, they're making it by while everything's going on in the kingdom, and they're training Frederick how to take over the family, and everyone is just super cute. Gwendolyn survives her age up as well. So here she is. Arthur also survives his age up, and they're twins. Oh, Arthur's eyes are green too. Oh my goodness. All the Alders have the wrong color eyes. This is Eric. Eric is the son of Ophelia and Connor. Here we are at one of the island castles, and here's Prince James, too small for the crown he wears. And he is just really upset because nothing is going his way. He's realizing, he made a deal with way more powerful people than he ever thought. They promised him that he was going to be king, but really they just use him as a puppet to deal with foreign diplomats while they run the kingdom, and they're trying to bring their dark goddess through. And he's just not getting anything he wants, and nobody's respecting him. And all trade has stopped with Avalon. Nobody wants anything to do with our kingdom. So he's not doing great. The peasants and everybody just hate him, and nobody respects him. And here he is with his wife, Josephine, trying for another child. And Josephine does end up pregnant, but then starts to think she's losing the child. So at this time, she, after being threatened and treated like crap from him, she takes their children to Moria and goes back home. And John is just feeling like a big loser. At this point, we are really deep into the plague and the famine. And the family is starting to notice that food is getting harder to come around. So we have a few rough years where not everyone gets to eat, and Halia is making the biggest sacrifices of all because she wants to make sure that her family is okay. And no one really seems to notice that she is just not as well as everyone else. We also check in on, oh, I'm sorry, guys. I kept saying that they were doing fine on the farm. they were in the middle of a food famine as well. So that all the crops were not harvestable, and we were feeding our Sims once a day. And so no one was doing great, but they were still trying their best to make it the most of it. So that's why we have like a lot of cute family moments. So here we are visiting in with Jedediah in his little camp. We have Gemma, who aged up into this amazing teen. And unfortunately, she doesn't survive her age up. So I do a cute little montage when she passes away. And we learn that she became an amazing archer and even better thief. And her and Robin fall in love. And they plan to get married, and they want to run away whenever she knows her siblings are safe, because she knows her dad is a big doofus. But unfortunately, that day never gets to come because Calvin does end up finding Jedediah and the kids, and he wants to bring them back to Tamara, to their mom. And this means so much to Gemma to know that her mom actually wants her, because her and her mom always had a very tough relationship when she was like growing up, because she didn't feel wanted by her mom. And so Calvin asked Gemma to go get her dad so he can take everyone home. And unfortunately, Jedediah ends up poisoning Gemma with poisonous mushrooms or berries, poisonous berries or mushrooms, I can't remember. Whenever Calvin outs that Jedediah burned down their home and is the reason that his oldest son is dead, and that he left his wife and abandoned him, and his whole family turns on him in a desperate move to find freedom in that moment, he poisons Gemma. So Calvin takes Jedediah and everyone back to the Alder family. So they're on their journey back. Ashton survives his age up, and he and Christine repair their relationship. Ashton decides that he is going to go train with this elite force that he's heard whispers about. So he becomes a monster hunter, and he has every intention of eliminating the vampires from the kingdom with other monster hunters. So in this episode, the year 1315 approaches, and that is one episode, A Feast for the Famine. In that year, Frederick gets to meet with Mary and her sister, and their dad has a lot of food. And for the peasants right now, that is hard to come by. He still has people who are willing to trade with him when he travels. So he brings back like a store of wheat and grain, and they're better off than most people. But he has 2 daughters, and he doesn't have money for their dowry. So he reaches out to Jacob to try to make an arranged marriage, because the Alders have a lot of land, and he knows that whenever things get better, like marrying a man with land is always a good thing. So Frederick is here to choose his bride, and one of the sisters really tries super hard to get his attention, but he ends up hitting it off really well with Mary, even though Mary really she's like kind of resistant to the idea, but she's less insufferable than her sister. So Frederick just has like a little crush on her. He's like, yeah, like you would be a great wife. I really like you. And she's great at weaving, and she's a great conversationalist. So we end up going and making an arrangement to marry Mary for Frederick. So Calvin comes home with Tamara's children. She hasn't seen her children since 1309, and it's 1315. So to see Morgan all grown up, and to find out that Gemma didn't survive, and all the things, like Tamara is feeling so many emotions. She did already mourn her children, so knowing that Gemma is lost is hard on her, but she's still very happy to see her other children. So seeing Morgan and Lancelot means so much to her, and it just lights her up. And she tells Calvin she will 100% marry him. She couldn't believe that he actually came back with her children, and she brought Jedediah to get justice. But because of everything going on with the kingdom, families had to deliver their own justice. So Jacob had to dole out the justice to Jedediah for being responsible for burning down their house and for the death of his oldest son. So Jacob takes care of Jedediah, and he finally gets the justice for being the dirty scumbag he was being. All the time he was being a scumbag. And Tamara is really happy. Honestly, everyone is super happy about it. Jacob doesn't like that he had to do this, though, but he is willing to do what he needs to do for his family. And Tamara, kind of gives him what for before eventually he is dead. And eventually he passes away, and everyone is honestly relieved. So yeah, it's a moment for sure. And in this time, and later in the year, Frederick marries Mary in the family chapel, and they start and then officially Gen 2 takes over. So we start playing more as Frederick and Mary. Here is when Ashton and Christine say goodbye to each other during their teenage years, because Ashton is going to continue training with the monster hunters, and Christine really wants to marry a lord. So Ashton is doing everything in his power to make sure that his sister is well taken care of. The whole family is celebrating. They actually get to have a feast because there's a wedding, and part of the dowry was they got like grain to make bread. So I allow them to make bread every day along with their gruel. So they actually get to eat more food than they normally do. And I think they ended up having fish head stew because of the river. is what they did. So during this time, Frederick and Mary decide to, consummate their marriage. And Tiara gets a vision that her soulmate, Frederick, got married because she knew they were soulmates when they were children. But because she's more sensitive to magic, she knew it since they were children. But Frederick didn't know. He just has always been infatuated with Tiara. Tiara and her family are deep in the enchanted forest of Glimmerbrook, right outside of the Magic Realm portal, and they're living in their manor. And they're living in their manor, which is also glamoured from outsiders, so no one can come find them. And during this time, Tiara still doesn't have control of her physical magic, but she is really strong with her psychic magic and prophecies and scrying. So she's been kind of focusing in on that power. I also check in briefly because the Prince Augustin and Princess Taryn age up. They're still staying at the country castle, but no one knows they're there because as soon as Queen Mary whisked them away when the vampires took over, she made all the servants like shut their mouth and stay on property. So they do still grow up in a castle, but they grow up in the country isolated. And that they're also at Hemford on Bagley. So here is Prince Augustin. Elijah Alder ages up to a child. So this is Elijah. He is also the son of Jedediah and Ophelia. And at this time, if you look at the family down below, Ophelia has already ran away in the middle of the night because when she found out Connor was a vampire, and it wasn't just like a plague, it was actually a vampire curse and transformation, she takes all the money he leaves them with and she runs away to the kingdom of Moria. So she ends up taking the money Connor left for all of his kids to have a good life, and that includes Christine's dowry. And Christine had always planned on marrying higher up, so he had a good dowry set aside from his commission from the abbey for her. So they're left with absolutely nothing, and they have to stay on Alder Village. And Christine is taking care of her brothers Elijah and Eric, so she's having to raise them because Ophelia made that selfish move. Morgan Alder survives and ages up to a teen as well during this time period. So here's Morgan. And Calvin and Tamara live happily ever after. And I kind of just wanted to show those moments because she suffered so much during season 1, aka the 1300s to 1310. She went through the ringer, even in the early 1310s, she was going through the ringer. So we wanted to make sure she had a happily ever after. And so she gets married here on Alder Farm and is living a great life. And I think Calvin and Tamara also have a child of their own. So this is when we're taking over as Frederick, heir 2. And Frederick starts off as a crafty, he starts off as a businessman. He's selling what ore he can. And Mary also spins thread. So he's got her thread out here to spin as well. They're just trying to get a little coin saved up because he would like to build a smithy. It's always been something he would dream of. And as you can see, we got rid of the farm as well at some point because it was, the land was blighted and we couldn't grow anymore. Talia is not feeling too great. She has not been the strongest during all of this because of the lack of food. She didn't want her family to know, but she was always taking less and less to make sure everyone had enough. So this is just another instance where she's not doing her best. Mary is about to give birth to her and Frederick's first child. And so we're about to witness the birth of Gen 3. And this is in the year 1316. And the episode is called Gen 3 is Born. So 1316 is one whole year as well. 1316 is one episode called Gen 3 is Born. So Frederick helps his wife Mary through the birth, and Mary gives birth to their first child, who is Anne, who they name Anne. And everyone is so happy that Gen 3 is born. And we're celebrating that because her and Mary both survived, this famine, pregnancy and birth, which is something very hard, but it does take a big toll on Mary's body. So Jacob ages up to an adult, and we find out that Halia is not going to survive her age up. So we plan the death of our matriarch, which is super sad. In the year 1316, Princess Eleanor is sick of being the thrall of Vladimir. She currently, and they're all staying in the Gothic castle, and she's walking the halls where her family was assassinated, thinking that her children are dead. But she doesn't know that her mother-in-law Bella whisked away her sons, and she thinks that her daughter Adelaide is corrupted by the evil witches because Adelaide has to pretend like she is on their side. So Princess Eleanor just feels so alone. And as you can tell, her color is gone in her hair, she's just sallow and very wraith-like. So she, in desperation, sees the monster that circles the islands and decides to join the monster by diving off of the cliff. And she does not survive her fall. She just didn't want to be the host for what she believed to be an evil spirit, because Vladimir wanting to put the soul of his true love in her, she couldn't see how that would be a good thing for anybody. And even though she felt like a shell, she didn't want them to take advantage of her. So she took that opportunity away. So this is kind of that moment that happened. So trigger warning if you watch that episode. Side note, you know, trigger warning on the story, but she is a sim, their code. And I just use MCC to like pick her death. She doesn't actually do the action, but that's like my storytelling. I just felt like that was the end I saw when I saw her this scene. I was like, you know what? That's what happens. So we lose Princess Eleanor because she feels like she has lost everything. And she's decided that in this moment when she's not being magically manipulated, she wanted to take power into her own hands. So right here we have Adriel, the dark witch in the coven. And she has given birth to a son with Prince James. So this is her son who she plans on using as a puppet to further their dark plans in the future. And their child's name is Armando Adriel. This is Millicent. Millicent is the real daughter of Vladimir. He's never met his daughter. And the reason she looks like this is because her life was unnaturally extended and attached to her father, who is a vampire. So Merlin did that to potentially end the vampire curse if they could ever find a way to do it. So they've been alive for, you know, hundreds of years, living in the magic realm, trying to decide how to overcome the vampires, and they've been living with the elves. So the evil witch coven made deals with the dark goddess to hopefully bring her through, so the dark goddess could tear down the magical barrier of the enchanted woods of Glimmerbrook, because they can't go to the portal because they have dark magic, and dark magic isn't allowed in Glimmerbrook or in the magic realm, so they can't get through. And so they do, you know, they make all these deals to bring the dark goddess through because they wish for her to break down the barrier and let them go and take the elves' magic. So they want to get magic from the elves. So Halia is sick and not doing well. She's like a shell of herself, been sick with fever. So she says goodbye to all her family because she knows that she's not going to make it. So here she is saying goodbye to Francis. And here she's saying goodbye to Gwen and saying goodbye to her true love, Jacob. Oh man, this moment was so hard for me. I literally cried on camera. This is 1317 part 1, the death of our matriarch. I've never played a sim that I've made a sim that looked like me, but I've never played a sim based on that because I think it's not that it's weird if you do it. It made me uncomfortable because I just never did. So I usually just make sims and tell stories, and it has nothing to do with me. But Jacob looks like my husband and Halia looks like me. And even though they made choices we would never make to play the sim family, and at this point I have been playing the challenge for over a year. Yes, because it's October 5th is when I made this. I started the challenge in October 23, and then I played Halia and Jacob until October 2024. Like, I cried when she passed away on camera. I cut a lot of it out of the footage, but I was crying when she had to pass away. So this moment was super special. Gave them one last kiss. She touches his cheek and says goodbye and thanks him for the life they had together. Super, super, super emotional. She gives her son one big hug. I do believe this is Arthur. And yeah, she passes away, and the whole family is not better for it. I can tell you that. Death takes her, but she does linger. Her spirit does linger and has still been there for her family whenever they need her the most. So that is good. But, you know, Jacob lost his one true love, his soulmate. So having that loss was really heavy on his heart. Here's Ann Alder. Ann Alder did survive to infancy. So that was really exciting because she was a famine baby. And, you know, Halia's sacrifice is the reason why so many of the kids did survive. So that was amazing. And Mary was very happy that her daughter, another year while things were so hard on them. And it's just so cute. And so Mary was trained to be a very role specific wife. Her and Frederick have more of a friendship and not a romance. They realize that, you know, they weren't like in love compatibly, but she knows that Frederick's a good husband, but she's kind of not extremely happy, and no fault to their own. It's just that they're not compatible. So like during the day, he's out doing farming stuff and trying to find food and foraging and learning how to blacksmith, and she's like spinning thread and taking care of the baby, cooking dinner, and then they go to bed. So they have a very like not close relationship. As I was saying, Frederick is out here. This is Mary's sister Alice. I just remember her name. Alice is a brat, and she comes around often mad because Frederick never picked her, because she actually really had a big crush on Frederick and was very slighted whenever Frederick picked Mary to marry instead of her. So this is Alice meeting her niece Anne, but she doesn't have a relationship with Anne now, so she didn't care too much about her sister's baby, which is really sad. Francis Alder ages up to a teens, and we now have our second household for Gen 2, and he ends up being an art lover and a loner. And I feel like he got the art lover trait from his mom because his mom painted, so it was really sweet to have that happen. And Francis has a really sad love story, and it continues continues to be sad into the new decades. So what's new for Francis? He was never meant for a happy partnership. He meets this pirate girl. They get married. Like, they meet each other in a season. They get married. He finds out that she has a kid named with another pirate named Jack Sparrow. And so he becomes stepdad to them. Annabelle, his wife, gets pregnant with triplets and doesn't survive birth. So Francis is left with his stepson and his 3 children, newborn children, and no wife. So he is very overwhelmed just a few years after getting older, which is crazy. So his life start is pretty chaotic. So here's Francis and Abigail, and they just had a good time. They weren't like in love, obviously, but they just enjoyed each other's company and giggled. And he just loved how she just shows up and he's like, you know, I'm looking for a bride. And she's like, I'll marry you. You know what I mean? So they just like really hit it off. So Jacob marries them there in the chapel, and they, you know, like I said, they have their family, and unfortunately she doesn't survive birth. So here the Dark Goddess is telling everyone their plan for taking over the kingdom and breaking down the barrier of Glimmerbrook. And this is in the episode Battle for the Kingdom, and it's in the year 1317. And she's just letting them know that they have done enough dark magic and sacrificed enough people, because during every year from 1313 to 1317, each vampire took a life in the kingdom to saturate the blood, to use the plasma of the Sims to saturate the land with their dark magic. So they've been doing blood magic, essentially. Victoria is excited because she's officially going to be queen of everyone, and that's been her plan all along, to get back at her father and her brother, who she loves but is extremely jealous of. So even though it looked like Vladimir was behind everything, Vladimir just wanted his wife back. And so he sided with his sister, believing that their father was the reason why they didn't have anything, when realistically, it was Victoria who is the reason he lost his wife and child. So they plan to finalize their spells this year in the year 1317. So this is Evangeline. Evangeline is the one true love of Vladimir. She gets word that Vladimir is finally back in Avalon, and her daughter have finally found a way using the elven magic and their spellcaster friend, Yennefer. They recruit all the monster hunters and all the knights of the kingdom to make a tiny little army to overcome the vampires and the dark witches. So she's coming here to lead them because she is the princess of a long forgotten warrior kingdom. So here's Evangeline looking amazing. They finally get Adelaide, because I think Adelaide gets away from the Dark Coven, and Adelaide isn't sure that she's going to be able to resist the pull of the Dark Goddess, but she wants to help people above all else. So she is here with them, getting ready to train up and have the final battle. Frederick is working hard, but obviously struggling, being, you know, heir to the family. So here he is out doing his smithery. And this is Prince James, or AKA King Regent James, throwing a temper tantrum. He decides that he is going to confront the witches and tell them, "You didn't give me what I wanted. I am the king. I deserve to be respected." And he's just, you know, showing himself. And at this point, Naru is like, "Don't worry about this. We're going to take care of everything right now." And she starts to do a dark spell to bring down the barrier of Glimmerbrook, so their coven can get in and finally get to the elves. And at the same time, Victoria drains King Regent James of his life force, using that to power the spell as well. And Prince James, the king who never was, passes away. As night falls, Ashton and all the monster hunters come to the castle to finally end the curse of the original vampires and to take care of the dark witches and remove Naru from the world. Ashton fights Vladimir, and it's pretty close, but Vladimir is obviously well trained, even with Ashton's extra abilities. And what ends up bringing down everyone is that Evangeline fights Vladimir, and Vladimir realizes it's Evangeline, and she tells him the truth, how Victoria was hunting them down for years, and that their daughter survived, and that with their blood, they can release Vladimir of his curse, because he was the first turned vampire. Unfortunately, we can't release the curse of all the vampires, but they can, what the spell they can do is give vampires choices to be good. So now our vampires aren't inherently evil. They can choose to be good, or they can choose to be neutral, or they can be like Amy and continue to be evil. They capture Naru and they remove her from the world, and they take care of all the other witches and the vampires who will not resist the pull of darkness. And so we have more of the final battle. Over here, we have an elf battling with Adriel, and we have Yennefer battling with one of the other, I think she is like an enchantress or something. Over here, Adelaide, Millicent, and Evangeline are trying to do the spell to cure Vladimir because that's the only one they can save. And again, this is all, Victoria chose this. She was going to sacrifice her own child to the coven. She has a dark heart. Vladimir didn't have a dark heart. He turned into a vampire for vengeance. So they were able to reverse his vampirism, but that doesn't reverse the evil actions he does, obviously. So he has a lot to atone for. But he goes and lives in the magic realm. He goes and lives in the enchanted forest of Glimmerbrook, where he hasn't been allowed for centuries, with his wife and his child, Millicent, to get to know them because he spent so long without them. So this is just more from the battle. Kadia and Castor ages up, and he is the illegitimate child of Jedediah and the spellcaster Ama Brewer. Here is Frederick. Just an exhausted dad, but he's at least very attentive with his Anne. He loves his daughter so much. Alexander ages up to a kid. Here's Abigail before she gives birth to the triplets. Abigail was a lost royal. The tea. Abigail was a lost royal. Oh my gosh. She was a pirate. She had, oh my goodness. That is something I didn't know. Too bad we lost her. That could have been a fun story for Francis. Here is Lancelot, he in his age up. This is when Tamara gave birth to her and Calvin's daughter. Here is Jacob looking at his Gen 3 first born grandchild, Anne. He's so happy. 3 generations together, stinky little baby. Frederick had apple seeds from an apple that Tiara gave him whenever they were a child. So he plants them and begins a family apple orchard because he can feel his heart and soul calling out for Tiara, even though he's married to Mary. Lately, Tiara has been on his mind a lot. So that's been a whole thing. Oh, so this is when Abigail gives birth to their children and unfortunately does not survive birth. So she passes away. This is Kiana, but I changed her name to Catriona. This is Theodore, and the game named the kid Jedediah, and I was like, we are not naming another one Jedediah. That name is cursed in our family, so I changed it. Francis finally gets the farm up and rolling again in the year 1318 because, you know, the blight is over. The darkness has been lifted from the land. The land is still scarred, but we can finally grow crops again. So, you know, everyone's pretty happy. We got a lot of babies in Alder Village and new married couples. So everyone is doing pretty good. And then Tiara shows her face. And Tiara, as soon as she comes back to the mainland, searches for Frederick. And she goes and sees that he's happy. And they try to have a friendship. She tries to have a friendship with Mary, but I think Mary can tell that there's something between them. Tiara meets Anne, and she's very happy for Frederick. They don't cross any boundaries. You know, she brings him the apple seeds. She brings him more apples, and he was like, yeah, like I saved the seeds from the apples you gave me before, and, you know, I'm planting an orchard. So thank you for that. And she sees that as an act of love, but she won't say anything because she doesn't want to be the other woman. She doesn't want to ruin his marriage and his life. And Frederick, he's happy, but, you know, he could be happier because he could be married to his soulmate. Him and Mary don't have like the best of relationships, but it's well enough. And he tries to support her by selling her threads and, you know, like giving her own autonomy. He doesn't try to manage his wife or anything. He tries to give her a comfortable life. He does the best he can. And here he is trying to sell their milk, copper bars that he's learned how to make, and more of her thread. Anne and Mary here in the garden, you know, she's trying to embrace it, but I do remember her having lots of mood swings whenever I was playing with them. She just really was not happy in life. She definitely felt like she settled. So Anne aged up to a toddler, and we decide, oh, and her eyes are green. Oh yeah, I took a picture of this. So during the famine and plague, not only did we lose Hulya, I believe we also lost Eddard because we no longer have him in the family. And I do believe this is Ghost Hulya and baby Eddard looking over the family farm while everyone is asleep. Mary and Frederick do end up having another child, and this is another daughter who they name Isolde, and Mary does not survive birth of Isolde. So here's baby Isolde, but they have officially lost Mary, and since Isolde is an infant here, she's definitely 1.5 years old at this point, and her mom did die during birth of fever and sweats. She was just really weak. You know, she was pregnant during the famine and gave birth to Anne. Her giving birth during the famine, having to be pregnant during that time and be nursing, her body was just weak and she couldn't survive the second birth of her daughter. So during this time, Frederick enlists the help of his sister Gwen, and Gwen comes over and helps with the babies very often. The family's just looking out for each other. The farm ends up doing really good that fall, and we have the opportunity to finally buy animals again and just get things going up over the next couple of years. And we just have new life on the farm from the years 1318 to 1319. Francis has to get married. He always has like a kid on his arms, on his back, and on his leg. He is surrounded by his children, and they all survive up to toddlerhood. So this is Joshua, Theodore, and Catriona. Later in the year, Jacob takes his sons out to the tavern because they're too young, and they have 2 young children. So they're too young to be single and widowers, and they also have young children. So he takes them out to the local tavern to help them find, marriage matches. And Francis meets Jenna Brewer and finds out that that's his soulmate. So they end up getting married. And obviously Alice is in the background, upset she's not picked again. So later in the fall, we have a wedding for Jenna and Francis, and she's happy to be stepmom to the kids. So here's Jenna Brewer. Ashton and Tiara are in attendance at the wedding. And Lancel and Frederick finally admits to Tiara after, I believe, 2 years. Yes, 2 years after his wife has passed away, that, he's always loved Tiara, and he believes that they were always meant to be. And Tiara explains that they are soulmates, and she's known since they were children. So they decide to, move forward in their relationship, but they go slow. A soul ages up to her next age, and Chadwick Gothic ages up, which this is Eleanor's youngest son with Lord Roderick. And Amor Gothic ages up to a teen. And here is the Gothic family magic well. Tiara comes back to the family estate because before she can marry Frederick, she wants to find a way to get her magic back. So she beseeches her ancestral well. And Jenna Brewer is also a spellcaster. So I took a picture of her because she was at the magic realm doing magic. So I was like, oh, look, she's here too. Frederick is doing good on the farm right now. Tiara and him, they decided to be in a relationship, but he knows that she's got, some things to take care of. So they finally get a horse, and he's learning how to horseback ride. And Tiara shows up, and she's like, hey, you. And he's like, hey. And she announces that she got her magic back, and he proposes, and they want to start their life together and live happily ever after. So we're in the year 1320, by the way, when he finally proposes. Jenna being a stepmommy to all the kids, and Morgan visiting. Lancelot proposes to Naomi, but I forget about this, and he does not marry her. But at the time, everyone is just, everyone in the kingdom are newly teenagers. The kingdom has been out of a famine and a plague since the year 1317. So it's been 3 years. Things are finally starting to feel like they could be normal. The next season is around the corner. Everyone is trying to make matches and start new lives. And our royal prince and princess, Prince Augusta and Princess Taryn, and Queen Mary come back to the castle and meet back up with the king, who has been in a coma the whole time up until, the darkness was lifted. And they decide to be a royal family of the people and do a masquerade ball in the year 1321. So without further ado, that is my 1310 summary from 1311 all the way to the year 1320. And I hope you guys understood everything, my cliff notes, and have a great one. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.